It's a busy afternoon in the heart of a bustling downtown district, where people rush to and fro, moving like clockwork through the vibrant streets. The city's energy is palpable. Hustling office workers in crisp suits, delivery trucks weaving through traffic, and the hum of distant conversations and car engines filling the air. The sidewalks are filled with pedestrians lost in their own thoughts, some glancing at their phones, others hurrying to meet deadlines or appointments. It's just another ordinary day, until a moment of chaos shatters the regular rhythm. A man, probably in his late 50s, sharply dressed in an expensive tailored suit, suddenly falters in the middle of the sidewalk. His eyes widen with panic as he places a trembling hand on his chest, his face contorting in pain. He staggers, taking a few desperate steps before collapsing to the pavement, unable to breathe. The man's chest heaves, his body jerking in distress, and he falls to the ground, gasping for air, surrounded by an ever-growing crowd of onlookers. The pedestrians slow, some pausing to stare, unsure of what to do. A few take out their phones, others freeze in shock, but no one steps forward. The suddenness of the situation leaves everyone hesitant, unsure whether they should intervene or wait for someone else to take charge. For a moment, it feels as though time itself is standing still. The man's face is pale, his breaths shallow and erratic. The street noise around him seems to fade into the background, as if the world is holding its breath. But amid the confusion and hesitation, one figure stands apart. A young black teenager, no older than 16, is passing by the scene. The boy, dressed simply in worn clothes and sneakers, notices the commotion and doesn't hesitate for a second. Without thinking, he pushes through the crowd, rushing to the man's side with a sense of urgency and focus that stands in stark contrast to the confusion around him. The teen quickly assesses the situation. His hands move with practiced precision as he kneels by the older man, his heart pounding in his chest, but his mind calm. He is no stranger to emergency situations. Though young, he's had his fair share of experience with first aid training. He knows what to do. His instincts take over as he carefully checks the man's pulse and begins to perform chest compressions. Bystanders continue to watch, some whispering to each other, others taking out their phones to capture the scene. But the teen remains undeterred by the eyes on him. He's doing what needs to be done, and that's all that matters. He doesn't worry about recognition or the crowd surrounding him. His only focus is saving the man's life. With steady hands, the teen works methodically, pushing down on the man's chest, counting the compressions in his head, ensuring each movement is measured and precise. The air around them seems thick with tension. Seconds pass like minutes. The teen's heart races with adrenaline, but his actions remain steady. Amid the noise, a few people murmur in disbelief, but no one else dares to take over or intervene. It's clear that the teen, though young, is in control of the situation. He's calm, collected, and determined. He understands what's at stake. This is someone's life. The man continues to struggle to breathe, but with the teen's careful guidance, the color begins to return to his face. Slowly, the man starts to show signs of life, and the teen doesn't stop even when he notices a shift. Only when paramedics arrive, their sirens blaring, does he step back. The emergency responders take over quickly, but it's clear that the teen's timely intervention has made all the difference. The man, once unconscious and on the brink of death, is now stable and breathing on his own, thanks to the young boy's quick thinking. As the paramedics rush the man to the hospital, the crowd begins to dissipate, But the teen doesn't stick around to receive applause. His work is done. He fades back into the street, not seeking acknowledgement, just quietly continuing on with his day. Little do the onlookers know, but the life he just saved belongs to a wealthy businessman, an influential man with a reputation for being far removed from the lives of people like this young teen. What follows next is an encounter that will change both their lives in ways they could never have imagined. The teen, still unaware of the significance of his actions, continues on with his life, thinking little of the ordeal. The businessman, however, is left in awe, not just by the fact that his life was saved, but by the kind of person who stepped in to help him. The twists that unfold next, driven by the power of one selfless act, will leave everyone astonished, changing the course of their lives forever. The young black teen, Marcus, grew up in a modest neighborhood where resources were scarce, but community spirit was abundant. From a young age, Marcus demonstrated an exceptional sense of empathy, always looking out for others and offering help whenever he could. Raised by a single mother who worked long hours as a nurse, Marcus often had to navigate the challenges of life on his own. He learned early that life wasn't always fair, but that didn't mean you couldn't make a difference, even if you didn't have a lot. Marcus's dream was to become a doctor, his ambition fueled by the desire to help people in his community. He saw the suffering around him, especially when people didn't have the means to seek proper health care. His mother, though dedicated to her work, had always struggled to balance the demands of her job and providing the attention he needed. Still, she instilled in him the value of education and compassion. Marcus admired the way she cared for patients, even when it meant sacrificing her own well-being. However, becoming a doctor was no easy feat. With financial constraints and limited access to advanced medical programs in his neighborhood, Marcus had to be resourceful. He made use of community programs whenever possible. He enrolled in a local first aid class offered by the neighborhood health center, where he learned basic life-saving techniques and gained a deeper understanding of the medical field. Even though the materials were outdated and the classes didn't have the latest technology, Marcus's determination never wavered. His goal wasn't just to become a doctor. He wanted to make a real difference in the lives of those who couldn't afford the care they needed. In school, Marcus's teachers often praised his intelligence and quick thinking. He wasn't just smart academically. He had a natural ability to empathize with others and take action in critical situations. Whether it was helping a classmate in need or volunteering at local shelters, Marcus stood out as someone who didn't hesitate when there was a chance to help. His friends knew him as someone who could always be counted on, even in the most difficult times. His sense of responsibility and drive to serve others was apparent in everything he did. Meanwhile, across town, a different world existed, a world far removed from Marcus's struggles. Charles Matthews, a successful business magnate and billionaire, was in his mid-50s and well known in the city for his vast wealth and influence. With an empire built on real estate investments and luxury services, Charles lived a life many could only dream of. He resided in a multi-million-dollar penthouse overlooking the city, with a private staff attending to his every need. His business acumen had made him untouchable in the corporate world, but it also created a layer of arrogance that distanced him from the realities of ordinary life. Charles wasn't the type to get involved in the day-to-day struggles of regular people. He had no reason to, in his mind. The vast majority of his interactions were with those who shared his wealth and status, people who had the resources to buy solutions for their problems. His wealth shielded him from most hardships, and he had grown accustomed to solving issues with money and influence. However, this detachment also made him blind to the challenges others faced, and his relationships were often shallow, built around status rather than genuine connection. Despite his wealth and success, Charles's health had begun to deteriorate. His once vibrant lifestyle had left him with a history of poor choices, stressful work habits, neglecting exercise, and indulging in unhealthy foods. He lived in a bubble, surrounded by luxury, but without realizing that his own health was slipping away. His world revolved around managing his business, making more money, and maintaining his social circle. But he had little concern for the well-being of those outside his sphere. His arrogance had led him to believe that money could fix everything, even his own personal challenges. The story of these two individuals, Marcus, with his compassion and determination to help others, and Charles, with his wealth and arrogance, was about to intersect in a life-changing moment. Both had the potential to make a difference, but they were living in worlds that felt increasingly separate. The meeting of these two disparate lives would not only reveal the importance of empathy, but also show the power of selflessness, and how one young person's actions could change everything for both of them. This was the beginning of a journey neither Marcus nor Charles could have predicted. The bustling city street was filled with the usual noise of cars honking, people chatting, and the hurried footsteps of commuters. Among the crowd, a wealthy older man, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, walked briskly towards a cafe. Suddenly, he faltered, clutching his chest with one hand and gasping for air. His knees buckled as he collapsed onto the sidewalk, a look of sheer panic on his face. Bystanders froze, unsure of how to react. Some stepped back in fear, others stood paralyzed in shock, staring at the man as his breathing grew more labored. The tension was palpable, with no one moving forward to help. Then, cutting through the crowd, a young black teen, no older than 17, noticed the man's distress. The teen's name was Malik. He was no stranger to helping others. His dream of becoming a doctor had driven him to take every opportunity to learn first aid and CPR. Malik had attended community classes, using the limited resources available to him, and he knew exactly what to do in emergencies like this. Without hesitation, he pushed through the crowd and knelt beside the man. "Stay with me, sir," Malik said, his voice steady but urgent. The man's breathing was shallow, and his skin had already taken on a pale, ashen color. Malik quickly assessed the situation. It was clear the man was experiencing a severe asthma attack, or possibly a heart-related issue. Reaching into the man's suit jacket pocket, Malik retrieved an inhaler and administered it quickly, following the steps he had learned in his training. The onlookers remained silent, unsure of what they were witnessing. Malik's actions were calm, methodical, and precise. His hands moved with the confidence of someone who had practiced these steps time and time again. As the inhaler worked its magic, the man's breathing began to stabilize, and color slowly returned to his face. Malik continued to monitor him closely, checking his pulse and ensuring the man wasn't slipping back into unconsciousness. Moments later, the man's eyelids fluttered open. He gasped for air, his chest rising and falling as he regained some strength. The shock of the situation seemed to cloud his awareness, and he looked around, disoriented. His eyes fell on Malik, but there was no immediate recognition or expression of gratitude. Instead, he seemed confused, as if he couldn't quite piece together what had just happened. I'm all right now?" the man muttered, still dazed. By this point, a few bystanders had begun to gather, some applauding the teen's quick thinking. "That kid just saved him," one person exclaimed, while another looked at Malik with wide eyes, disbelief written across their face. "Did you see how young he is?" "And he knew exactly what to do," a woman remarked in astonishment. Others shook their heads in admiration, still trying to process the scene they had just witnessed. Malik, however, didn't seek any praise or attention. His focus remained on the man, ensuring he was stable and didn't need further medical help. He briefly met the man's eyes, but said nothing, instead opting to stay silent and let the professionals arrive if needed. Despite the recognition from the crowd, the wealthy man seemed almost embarrassed. He mumbled a quiet, "Thank you," still looking somewhat dazed, but there was no rush to express further gratitude. Malik stood up, ready to walk away when he felt someone tap his shoulder. A man in a business suit, clearly part of the affluent crowd that had gathered, approached him and asked, "How did you know what to do?" His tone was one of both disbelief and genuine curiosity. Malik, still modest, shrugged. "I've been trained. That's all." But for the bystanders who had watched the young teen save the life of a man they likely assumed had more privilege and power, the moment lingered. Many couldn't fathom that someone so young and from such an unassuming background could have taken charge in a life-or-death situation. Malik's calmness, his knowledge, and his quick thinking left an indelible impression, one that many would carry with them long after the emergency had passed. After a few minutes, the man was finally stable, sitting up and taking deep breaths. His chest no longer felt like it was caving in, and the pain had started to subside. He looked around, his vision still a little blurry, trying to process what had just happened. A few onlookers who had witnessed the whole ordeal began to gather around, murmuring about the teen's heroic actions. "Did you see that kid? He just saved him, didn't even hesitate," one woman whispered to her friend, nodding toward the spot where Malik had knelt beside the man. The man, still trying to regain his composure, overheard the conversation and turned his gaze back to the teen, who was quietly standing off to the side, giving space as people continued to gather. The scene felt almost surreal to him. He had never imagined that someone so young would possess the calmness and skill to handle such a serious emergency. As the man listened to the onlookers describe what had happened, it became clear how close he had come to losing his life. One person mentioned that, had the teen not acted quickly, he might not have made it. The reality of the situation hit him hard. The sudden recognition of his vulnerability in that moment was a stark contrast to his usual sense of invincibility. Turning back to Malik, the man could barely process the overwhelming gratitude he felt. He approached the boy, trying to find the words. Thank you," he said, still shaken, though his voice was sincere. "I don't know what would have happened if you weren't there." Malik, without missing a beat, simply shrugged it off. It was the right thing to do. "No big deal," he said with a modest smile, his humility radiating through. The man stared at him for a moment, feeling a deep sense of awe. He had seen many people in his life, but never had he encountered someone like this, someone so young, yet so unassuming in the face of danger. In that instant, something shifted within him. He began to ask about Malik's background, curious about the young man who had just saved his life. As Malik opened up, he learned about the boy's dreams of working in healthcare, his desire to become a doctor or paramedic, and the obstacles he faced: financial difficulties, limited resources, and the lack of opportunities. The man's thoughts began to stir as he listened. Here was a boy who had grown up with very little, Yet he was more selfless and compassionate than many people he knew who had far more than they needed. The contrast between Malik's aspirations and the man's own lifestyle struck a chord within him. For the first time in a long while, he felt ashamed of how disconnected he had been from the struggles of people like Malik. It wasn't just that Malik had saved his life. It was the way he had done it, without any desire for recognition, without asking for anything in return. It made the man question his priorities and wonder if there was more he could do to make a meaningful impact on others. The next day, the wealthy man, still deeply moved by Malik's actions, decided to take a step that would not only change the course of the teen's life, but also impact his entire community. Without wasting any time, he reached out to Malik's school and learned where he lived. With a mixture of anticipation and nerves, he arranged a surprise visit, bringing along a few colleagues who were equally committed to making a difference. Malik was at home, sitting at the kitchen table with his mother, reviewing some schoolwork. He had no idea that his life was about to change forever. The doorbell rang, and Malik's mother, a little puzzled, opened the door to find the man standing on the porch, holding an envelope. "Excuse me, are you Malik's mother?" he asked. She nodded, still unsure of the reason for his visit. "I'm not sure if you remember me, but I'm the man your son helped yesterday. I wanted to personally thank him for saving my life, and I'd like to offer something in return." The man handed over the envelope, and when Malik's mother opened it, her eyes widened in shock. Inside was a scholarship offer for Malik to attend one of the top medical programs in the country, fully funded, as well as an invitation to join a mentorship and internship program at one of the man's health-related ventures. It also included financial assistance to help her family recover from the financial strain the storm had caused. Malik stood there, speechless, staring at the papers in disbelief. His mind raced, trying to comprehend what was happening. This was more than he could have ever dreamed of, more than he could have ever imagined possible. The man looked at Malik, his voice full of sincerity. "I believe in your potential. You've already shown incredible strength and heart. This is just the beginning, but it's up to you to make the most of it. And I'd be honored to help you along the way." Malik could hardly find the words. After a long pause, he finally spoke, his voice quiet but resolute. "Thank you. I'm not doing this for me alone. I'm doing it for my family, for everyone who has supported me. I'll make sure to give back, not just to you, but to the community too." The man smiled, a genuine sense of pride welling up inside him. "I know you will. You've already shown what kind of person you are." In that moment, a bond was formed, not just one of gratitude, but one that would define the future for both of them. Malik knew that his path to becoming a healthcare professional had just been paved, and he was determined to honor the chance he had been given, not just for himself, but for everyone who had believed in him along the way. The wealthy man's life had changed the moment Malik saved him on the street, but the ripple effect from that single act of courage and selflessness was something he could never have predicted. As the weeks passed, he found himself increasingly drawn to the community he had once barely noticed. The very same community where Malik had grown up, a place where hard work and perseverance were often overshadowed by the weight of social and economic challenges. Inspired by Malik's courage, the man began using his wealth and influence to fund various community health initiatives. He partnered with local hospitals and healthcare providers to launch outreach programs focused on providing free medical care to underserved areas. He also funded scholarships for aspiring medical professionals from disadvantaged backgrounds, giving them the same opportunities Malik had received. These initiatives weren't just about money, they were about creating real, tangible change, helping to break down the barriers that kept so many from realizing their dreams. It wasn't just a financial investment. He became personally involved, often visiting local clinics and schools to speak with young people, encouraging them to pursue careers in healthcare or other fields where they could give back to their communities. He knew that with his connections and resources, he could help open doors. But it was Malik's example that inspired him to keep pushing for a better future for everyone, not just those in his circle. Malik, meanwhile, continued to work toward his dream. With the scholarship and the mentorship, he had the tools he needed to succeed. He excelled in his studies, becoming a top student in his medical program. He worked alongside the man's network, gaining invaluable experience and furthering his knowledge. But he never forgot the people who had helped him along the way, and he never lost sight of his original goal, to give back to the community that had shaped him. Malik knew that his success wasn't just about him. It was about the people who had believed in him, the ones who had supported him through difficult times, and the ones who would come after him, looking for a way out. The culmination of his journey came at a local community event held to celebrate the scholarships he and other students had received. The man, who had become an advocate for educational access and community empowerment, was in attendance. He sat in the front row, clapping with pride as Malik took the stage to speak. Malik had been asked to give a speech, but he hadn't prepared much. He didn't want to focus on his own success. Instead, he spoke from the heart, sharing the story of his journey, the struggles he had faced, and the people who had helped him along the way. "I'm standing here today because someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself," Malik said, his voice steady, yet filled with emotion. "This scholarship is not just for me. It's for my family, my community, and every kid who thinks that their dream is too big. I want to be the person who gives back, just like I was given a chance. No one gets here alone." The audience was silent, captivated by his words. And then, as the applause began, Malik's eyes found the wealthy man in the front row. The man, usually composed and in control, was clapping loudly, his face glowing with pride. Their eyes met, and in that moment, neither needed to say anything. They both knew the impact of what had happened, the lives that had been changed, the futures that had been reshaped. As Malik stepped off the stage, the wealthy man stood and walked over to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've done more than I could ever repay," the man said, his voice full of admiration. Malik smiled. "It's not about repayment. It's about making sure we all get a chance. And that starts with what we do today, not tomorrow." The story came full circle. What had begun as an unexpected encounter in a moment of crisis had evolved into something far greater, a partnership that would continue to shape the future. The wealthy man, now fully invested in making a difference in the world, and Malik, with his unwavering commitment to giving back, both stood as examples of how even the smallest acts of kindness could have far-reaching effects. And as the event drew to a close, the crowd rose in applause once more. It wasn't just a celebration of achievements. It was a celebration of a shared vision for a better world. Malik's story, a testament to the power of resilience, courage, and kindness, had become an inspiration for all. The wealthy man, once removed from the struggles of the everyday person, had learned the most profound lesson of all, that true wealth lies not in money, but in the ability to change lives. As Malik and the man stood together, overlooking the crowd, the closing thought echoed in both of their minds. A single act of kindness doesn't just save a life, it transforms them.